we just heard from Stefan on enterprise decisioning, and then we saw the report earlier from the Economist Intelligence Unit on the different scenarios that can play out by 2040. So the last decade has seen a lot of digital adoption, whether it's programs like the India Stack, UPI. India's made huge strides in digital adoption. The Aadhaar program we have, which is a sort of a social security for India. But with this accelerated pace of AI adoption also happening now, and Basali, I'd like to take this question to you. Do you see that there's some kind of a potential implication for like social inequality coming in with AI adoption, some kind of bias playing in?
So,
yeah,
okay. So thank you for that. I think it's a really good question. To start off with, I think it's useful to remember that India is a pretty unique country. We are, this year and also I think last year, India is going to be the fastest growing major economy in the world. But at the same time, if you look at GDP per capita, we are one of the lowest among these major economies. And what that tells us is the sort of, the lot of contradictions that hide in plain sight in this country. So all of us, I think, represent the modern, everyone in the room, very much modern, developed India, very digital first. But there is a huge population, many times the size of all of us, that still doesn't have access to mobile phones or, barely have access to it. So inequality in all ways, in all forms, especially digital inequality, is very true. And we've seen this with all sorts of technology. AI is unlikely to be any different, but I think there are positives. I think I mentioned earlier that AI can be a friend, it can be a foe. So if you look at the positives, one of the great things about AI, especially generative AI, is the speech to voice to text to voice and language capabilities that it has. So let's imagine a scenario where there's a 65, 70-year-old man in maybe a rural village in Uttar Pradesh who wants to book a train ticket to get from his, the nearest station to Delhi. And maybe he's not very familiar or comfortable with mobile, not comfortable with English, and he would have to depend on maybe his family or an agent to get that booking done. But once the IRCTC app has sort of voice command instructions, the task becomes many times easier for him. So AI can definitely enable that. All of us would have been reading in the news about the language debate, right? It's a hot topic in India. Now imagine a Hindi-speaking man in down south trying to maybe get some help from the cops in Bangalore. Can we have a way in which can AI work in ensuring those gaps are bridged? At the same time, we can look at, say, someone from, say, a Malayalam speaking person is at a government office in Bombay and is trying to get something done, get a license done, something, right? Can government services use these technologies to make things easier for people? So I think, AI can work in different ways. Important to keep in mind how that happens. I think Stefan mentioned about how the AI in insurance is going to be a huge factor in cutting down on fraud. So, a lot of algorithms are used to prevent human error, corruption, fraud. I think there was this case that was reported in the news from Telangana where the government was trying to put in a lot of digital welfare schemes. And one of those led to a small error where this woman who's very much below the poverty line and eligible for that benefit got left out because by some mistake, her late husband was identified as someone owning a lot of assets, including a car. But that was a mistake. And that's something that technology did. So, given that we are using technology to cut down on errors, if there is a flaw in the technology, how easy is it going to be to get redressal. We are likely to treat something like that with a lot of suspicion that, oh, that's probably a case of fraud, right? So I think it'll also be important to have a human in the loop and ensure that we do this in a responsible way.
Right. Of course, the bias can come in there, and like this with the quality of the data really matters when you training your models as well. I'd like to bring in Gaurav over here, since you deal with technology and in the general insurance space, and she just mentioned in the general insurance space, the quality of data. How do you ensure that you don't have examples like this happening?
So far, it was pretty difficult because insurance being still the younger kid on the block, has come in the BFSI sector, especially banking. Where banking started hundreds of years ago, but insurance, private sector especially, has come up in the last 20 years. In fact, Reliance was the first private insurer in the country. And likewise, the entire journey which has happened, including from the regulation point of view, we have been one of the last to jump the bandwagon. And we have to now play catch up. For example, we didn't have KYC norms for insurance till 3 years back. And if KYC is not there, that means the data is not clean. If data is not clean, that means you can't mind the customer. You can't, take decisions based on what the customer profile is. Because a lot of times the data which was fed by the agent, you have to trust that. And that was not always trustworthy. So all that meant that, decision making was poor from the start. Okay, it's garbage in, garbage out. So now that, we've got 3 years and coming in, and slowly we are trying to focus more and more on data and see how the fundamentals, which is the information, can help us augment the decision-making process. So now that we are enabled to take decisions, I think now the step forward is that how do we use the various tools which are available with us to take it forward.
Right. Okay, I just want to move on now. I mean, Basali earlier spoke about the various modeling that there was. And there's socioeconomic change, climate change, technology disruption, all of that coming in. So in such a situation, how would you go about, designing a product, pricing it, also looking at how you're going about your underwriting and your claims, and how do you see how do you see the adoption of AI helping in manage these changes? Amol, if you can take that.
Yeah, it's actually a very interesting question. And I agree to what Basali said earlier. We are going through a shift in socio-economic and technological advancements. But what are these shifts? The shifts are, India is a very young country. 65% of the population is less than 35-year-old. We expect almost 250 million people to move into middle class in next 5 years. So there is affluence, there is a young age, there is a lot of digital penetration that has happened. Aadhaar is come into picture, it's massive at scale. UPI is massive in India, bigger than most of the developed countries. So they are digitally very savvy. These are the shifts. What does this mean for the companies? It basically means the customer expectations are very different. I think Stefan covered it earlier, that the decision making needs to be very fast. The customers don't want to wait for 3 days to know the answer, whether you are accepting their policy or they're declining it or you're going to investigate it. So the shifts because of socioeconomics, because of technology, are that the customer expectations are very different. How does AI play a role in this? I think there are 3 things which AI will play a very major role in it. One, I think the decision acceleration. I don't think there is any technology which is as good as AI, especially generative AI, which can help us do that. I mean, there are some companies now who are issuing 80% of their policies instantaneously. This is possible because there are AI algorithms running. I think the solution Stefan mentioned is exactly doing that, right? So decision acceleration is one part where AI will play a big role. There will be a lot of task automations where AI will play a very big role. Anything that is repetitive, logical, computational task, I don't think we will need people to do that, and AI will be able to help us do it instantaneously. I think the third and the last thing where in midterm the AI will play a big part in is scaling up operations, but at the limited cost. Imagine a scenario where a customer had a request or a proposal in the insurance industry, they had to wait for 2 days to get the answer, right? Or they had a service request, they would have to call or go to the branch. Today at 10 o'clock in the night, he can do a WhatsApp chat with the AI bot and he can get the answers or the resolution to his service request. So I think that scaling up is possible and at a minimal cost because of the AI. So I think these 3 areas where AI will play a big role.
Right, right. Kshitij, I'd like to bring you in here. In the actuarial process, again, how do you see AI adoption helping?
So if I focus from a life insurance part, and I think this was alluded to before as well. I mean, India is not a single country, right? India, there are like thousands of India within India. And what we see is that especially from a mortality perspective, there is a very, very stark dependence on socio-economic population on mortality. And the pricing can be much sharper. So, I mean, if you look at the rates that were there probably around 15 years ago, there was a trend that suddenly with the advent of internet and digital population, where you can actually isolate internet savvy customers, which was associated with a very high socio-economic strata. The rates for them would have suddenly dropped by 70%, right? And it started from there. Obviously, you need to keep a watch out on these trends on an ongoing basis, because then there were distributors who came on a phygital model where basically they called it assisted sale, that you apply digitally, but then someone would call you. And that just changed the customer profile completely. And the effect of that has been seen that rates have been since increasing because you've not been able to get that population, identify that again. So I think all these analytics, continuously monitoring plays a big trend. But I think for me, I think one socio-economic factor is also, so there was some data that was done, and it's regularly done on population for Asia, because that mimics more the Indian behavior as well, where especially for Gen Z and millennials, it was found that what they value most is value for time. So more than money, energy, space, time is what matters. So just making sure the underwriting is as quick and simple as possible is really, I believe personally, that will be the game changer going forward from an AI perspective. Now in that field, if you look, I mean, there are simple things like you can, hit some financial bureaus, account aggregator, that's all easy done, run some early claim analytics model, that's also is being done quite commonly. But how do you take it forward from there? So for example, there are now apps which you just do a face scan, they can tell you whether you have sugar or not, whether you have blood pressure or not. And these are the 2-3 parameters that are of key importance when you're doing medicals. I mean, another one, and I have big debates with my underwriting team, is, so a big part is of this underwriting would be a doctor asking questions for disclosure. And so my underwriting team firmly believes that people disclose a lot more to doctors. Although I do think there is a bias there, given all of them are doctors. But, the point is, why can't a bot do that? And as Stefan mentioned in his presentation, the advantage that you'll get from the consistency there. So obviously it'll be much quicker. You don't have to wait for some doctor to come on call. But that consistency of decisioning that you'll get from the bot will, in my view, will be far superior than the existing process. So I think, there's a lot that can be done in this regard, and AI usage is what I think whoever gets it best will be the one who will win in the, in this market. So.
Right. So I guess AI can take out one factor in this, and that is the time factor, which you mentioned. It's in speeding up decisioning. And I'd like to just get Stefan's view also on this. So where does the differentiation come in then?
Well, let me take it from two different sides. So what we haven't discussed yet is that also for the IT providers, AI is important. We will develop our programs in a different way in the future. We basically will use AI to generate programs for us instead of writing them. And we can talk, let's say, also we will use more business users, I would say, in the end. Less techies that program everything, but business users that can explain to a machine what it should do, and then the machine will generate it. That's one thing. The other thing I want to say, it's kind of a warning, but it's maybe, I think, already mentioned by yourself. The more we have applications whereby we generate, let's say, electronic data, the more, again, we have problems of potential fraud, right? Also for motor insurance, I mean, a lot of insurers in Europe, they just say, send me a photo of your damage. Mm-hmm. Is it a car that had the accident that you're photographing and sending to me? Did you not basically manipulate that photo to make it look like it's bigger? So those are all, let's say, flip sides of the advantage that we have to remember. And a tool, let's say, bringing in AI without also thinking on the flip side is a dangerous game, potentially.
Right, right. And I'd like to bring in Gaurav on this, since you're talking about motor claims and taking a picture. And these days, there are a lot of claims that can be settled instantly using AI, like, okay, bumper damage, headlight damage, this is your estimate, done, right? But how much of this, is it going to be totally automated, or do you still need the human element in here?
I think they'll take some time. So right now, I think what AI is doing is helping us or augmenting the decision-making process. Okay, for example, we were one of the first to introduce the fact that your windscreen is damaged, and you can figure it out by just the photograph which has been submitted, and you can do a real-time settlement, because in a windscreen you can't repair it. And of course, we're doing the training of the rest of the parts, but that's a very nice point which you brought about, that what if somebody's manipulated the images? So of course, we'll have to have another AI bot to figure out if the manipulation happened or not. So right now, I think this plays a bigger part also in maybe economies where labor is expensive. But in India, you got the surveyors and all that stuff, so it's not very expensive to augment that same effort by a human. But wherever their labor is expensive, then of course you need these tools in order to automate. And this is just one process, but if you take multiple processes, like we get a lot of forms from the dealers, we get from the hospitals in case of health and all that stuff. So you got these IPAs, which is RPA with intelligence, where the entire process is not only just read, but also we extract meaningful data from the forms which have been submitted. Sometimes the hospital gives up to 200 pages of data for health claims. And we have to just take out meaningful data and do the interpretation around that. So that also is a very good way, and we have got partners who, and especially I've seen a lot of these small partners coming up and boutique partners coming up, and they're trying to figure out how they can, augment the decision-making process. Of course, after some time, you have to, of course, depend on an individual, but that too will improve, because, originally, I think about a year and a half back, just when ChatGPT had come in and the rest were not there, we tried to figure out another mechanism where why can't we put in all our product documentation, especially what the actuarial teams come out with, and use it as a FAQ. But in those good old days, at least that ChatGPT-3 was there, yeah. We asked questions like, what is pregnancy? Okay, do you have a pregnancy cover? But the term which is used by actuarial is maternity. So the guy couldn't figure it out. Mm-hmm. But now with GPT-4 and all the things have got advanced. But wherever we come in, we are 95, 97, 99% sure. But what happens to the 1%? How do you take care of that 1%? That thing is always there at the back of our mind, that can we trust AI to the limit we can? And so that's where the augmentation or the validation or the verification comes in. So I think for quite some time, AI will be like a maker, and we'll have to have a checker to validate the process. And of course, efficiencies will come in by that means.
Right.
But solely relying it on decision making just on tools, I think that's some time away.
Okay. I mean, and also, you know, the number of risk events will multiply, the number of models will multiply with AI coming in. So one of the things, and insurance is a highly regulated industry, right? So what kind of guardrails or kind of governance framework do you need to manage the risks coming from this? Amol?
So yeah, I think the risk with AI is as real as with any other technology, honestly. But the reason it becomes large is the speed at which AI is being adopted into different industries. The AI will have to have mitigations and governance mechanisms, and I think it is already started. If you see at a policy level, there is already European AI Act.
Okay.
Singapore has rolled out their act, FETA. I think Niti Aayog in India has also rolled out a paper which talks about responsible AI for all. So there are policy level works that have already happened. The company or the organization level work, if you ask me, some of the companies have started adopting work from these policy level works. For example, now HDFC Ergo has a AI ethical council. I think Tata AIA has a very interesting concept. They've started piloting nutritional labeling for the models, which basically is like on a food packet. If you buy, you have a nutritional labels, right? You know what contains in that packet. Now on the model, if there is a labeling which says that what is the exact basis on which the model is formed, what goes into it, is there a human intervention, what are the biases included? So things like these will probably put a governance framework around the companies, the work that is happening. But if I have to give like 3-4 actionables to a CEO on the governance framework, I would say, one, have a governance council formed in the organization, make them responsible for controls, make a policy, write a policy which is probably based on or in parallel to the public policies. Third thing I would probably recommend is to have a MRM in the organization. Like you said, there are hundreds of models running across,
Yeah.
right? And if you don't have controls on those models, you don't know what is going in, and it is affecting the critical decisions. Probably these are the 3 things I would probably definitely recommend. But though this is the governance, and yes, what you said is right. We need the immediate implementation of these
Right.
things.
Right. Kshitij, I'd like to bring you in on this. How do you see AI being, you know, adopted in the industry? Do you think there is a case for like faster adoption right now, or are we still limited by the amount of data available, the analytics available right now?
So, I mean, I think from a life insurance perspective and GI insurance perspective, the answer will be very different. So limited knowledge of general insurance, I would say probably a data is a lot more there, and it would be much faster, quicker. And if you see historically also, GI companies have been leveraging analytics a lot more than life insurance companies. From a life insurance perspective, I think one of the drawbacks of using AI, like the biggest advantage of using AI is that you just trust the data, right? You don't really want to know why, but whatever data throws out, you take. The problem with life insurance is that the decision that you're making is not being made for 1 year. It is being made for 40 years. So to give an example, if I again go back to mortality, one of the reason we see variation in mortality and significant is, say, the location. So top 100 city mortality versus outside top 100, there would be a significant difference, up to 30-40% higher. Now the point is, it's very important to understand that why is that happening, right? Is that due to lifestyle? Is that due to not being aware of fitness? Or is it due to health infrastructure not being present in those cities? Because, I mean, we know, say, for example, what we are seeing with pollution in our top cities, right? With now in winter days, someone being on the street having smoked average 12 cigarettes or something a day, right?
21 in Delhi.
Correct, correct. So that's the point that, you know, somewhere you need to know the reason of why the data is like it is to really understand how it will change in the next 40 years because you're committing to a 40-year policy. So I think that's why in life insurance, probably there needs to be a lot more analysis on understanding why it is happening. But I feel general insurance where contracts are much shorter term, I mean, it's just easier to adopt. You just read the data and expect the trend to not change in the next 1 year.
Okay. Gaurav, you want to quickly add to this, and then I'll go to the last question of that.
Sorry, what was the question?
No, fast adoption of AI in.
So the adoption is happening, but we have to be realistic about it. Okay, like a couple of examples which I gave previously also, that it is more for augmentation than for finalizing the decision, and each tool which we use, whether SaaS and what we're talking about, or the IPA tools which you use, those are the tools which will help in faster decision making, because we can embed those tools. We use, for example, a decision modeler. How can AI be embedded in that so that decision making can be faster? And of course, at the end is that throughout we for example we do agriculture this thing, and we're talking about crop, and we talk about sustainability and climate change. How can we take all the data which we do in a way from various satellite data and various data, and use tools to figure out what will be the impact on crop failure, right, or disease, and so on and so forth. So it's happening in fits and starts. I think the problem is not just the fact that there is a lack of data, but the problem is also that there are a lot of human aspect where the quality of the data scientists which is behind it also matters a lot. Okay, right. And that thought process is still developing. That how can we augment decision making and reach a level where we can really earn from it.
Right. Okay. Since we're almost out of time, I want to take this question to both Basali and Stefan. The end. See, with the AI available now, you can look at having more personalized insurance available. So how do you see the rise of more personalized insurance making substantial progress and addressing health challenges, Basali?
So personalization can be great, or it can be absolutely a disaster, right? Personalization might mean that you manage to expand your market, sell people exactly what they need, and that means you have more people who are insured. But at the same time, how are we going to go about it, especially at a time when so much is changing? So if you think about AI in healthcare, we mentioned that if you're able to scan and quickly tell whether someone has high blood pressure or diabetes, if we are able to tell years before whether someone is likely to get cancer or not, how are we going to deal with that? Is that going to be something we punish that person for, or are we going to encourage those kind of findings? I think that's really, really important to figure out how the sector is operating. And I think Amol mentioned having a governance body. I think it's really important that insurers have clear ethical framework internally about what data they're collecting and how they're going to use it. Right. Consumers are going to become a lot more data savvy, especially if you're thinking about Gen X and millennials. So they are going to care about what kind of data you're pulling in. So if you are going to track how much I'm exercising, are you also going to track what kind of food I'm eating, how many colas I'm having in the day? Yeah. So being transparent with users and being clear about what data they're collecting and how that is affecting pricing, I think that will be critical to actually benefit healthcare.
Right.
So, yeah.
Stefan, I'd like to have you can have the last word on how AI insurance can use AI.
Well, I can give you an example, I would say, where it would make a lot of sense to have extra data to make my models much better, and where in practice it doesn't work. And I go back to motor. We've done some studies on telematics data, for instance, and we found out that telematics data can predict much, much better if you are a dangerous person, yes or no. But who wants to have a machine in his car that is following all of his behaviors day and night? even if you give them financial incentives, many people would just not use it. And then all of the advantage of the theoretical AI model taking telematics into account disappears. And we've seen it also happening really in countries like Brazil, South Africa, where they have done several insurers in the market have done these studies and had to come back from it because 1% maybe of the people were ready to have such a device in their cars. By the way, we have, in our modern cars, we all have this device. We just don't know it.
Yeah.
But if you go to your service station, they can tell you a lot of things about your behavior, right? And the behavior of your car.
Right, and that's where the ethical considerations come in and data privacy as well.
Yes.
Exactly. I mean, this discussion can carry on much longer, but I think in the interest of time, we'll end it right here and we'll have a roundtable after this as well. So with that, I'd like to thank my panelists for this very interesting discussion. Thank you so much, gentlemen, and Barsali. Yeah.